Hey, party people. Did you guys see this? Did you guys see this monstrosity of a post? Some of you guys reached out and were like, Challenger, can you please just like break this down? Break this down and just explain what's going on because this is too long. Ain't nobody got time for this. Even though I appreciate them putting this together, I think this definitely goes over a lot of people's heads. As a player, it's a bunch of fluff. There's some interesting factoids in here. But as somebody who has shifted their focus on talking about the game more critically, more analytically, there is some interesting golden nuggets here, which I'll touch base upon. But the too long didn't read is that some classes get played more than others. They tweak them and see if that changes kind of like the usage of the class. And if it works out, awesome. If it doesn't, they keep tweaking it. But that is pretty much the gist of this big old thing. Some classes are more popular than others. Here, let's scroll all the way to the top. So here, so they're explaining how this is definitely a more behind the scene and how the design team, this comes from the design team specifically, goes about balancing the classes, and their main goal is to have it so all classes are kind of played at the same rate and all builds are played equally across the board, which I okay, I guess. They talk a lot about data. They obviously, this is something they tend to do, and I think it's to their detriment. Where like they rely too heavily on data points. Data is good, right? Data is awesome, but it should be a jumping off point, right? Because context matters. A lot of outside factors matter. It's not just numbers, right? Yeah, the numbers are the numbers. But I think the ability to derive the right answers from the data is more important than just actually taking the data at face value. I'm just going to break this down for you guys. Here, they're pretty much like, this is long. Get some snacks. Get ready to be here for a minute. Introduction here. The goals is pretty much they want to slow down when it comes to like doing class revamps and stuff like that to give players and the classes themselves a chance to like marinate a little bit. So they're going to slow down and they're going to focus more on like the more urgent, more like prevalent stuff that needs to be addressed. What will actually change? Fewer changes. Introduction to the data shared. For one, we'd like to share some figures with you as well as our expectations regarding this data. The data is taken from level 200 only characters or players. Makes sense. I have the dates. There's like a little time frame here. The game modes they're looking at for the data, obviously PVM, on Session Island, Coliseum 3v3, Coliseum 1v1. Spell rankings, how they calculate, what spells get used more than others. Expected values. Okay, so when they're balancing the classes or like the usage of the class or the outcomes of the class, this is their kind of like target percentages, right? Obviously, all class, you want them to have a 95% win rate against PVM. I don't know how they test that because definitely you're not winning 95% of the time against Nilesa or something. But obviously, all classes should be, more than less capable in holding their own PVM, right? Obviously not 100%, but 95, pretty high rate. In Session Island, I don't know how they calculate this because the whole point of Session Island is the higher you go, the harder it gets. I guess they, because even getting to like the first threshold where you fight Ulcan, not Ulcan, that the demon dude, right? Even that's kind of not a whole lot of people make it to that uh, floor because I've never beaten that. I think his name is Ulcan, the big chubby demon dude with the three minions. Uh, when I do on such an island, usually when I get to that point, like I'm in the top 100 for sure. So not a whole lot of people get. So I don't know how they calculate this. And obviously Coliseum, PvP, 50% win rate. I talked about this in my previous video, last video. I don't know. Um, it makes sense, right? Balance means 50-50. A balance means you're going to win half the time, you're going to lose half the time. When I touch upon this topic, I talked about how Pokemon TCG Pocket is a pretty balanced game. Some people love it, some people hate it, because you are going to be losing half your fights, right? And that is by design, but that is their idea of balance to them. And that's the idea of balance in general, right? With some, obviously, some points of deviations here, 3 points, 5 points, what have you. A difference of 3 points for expected limit is deemed too high or too low, right? There's some like thresholds they have there, but more or less 50% is what they're shooting for. The next presence represents a portion of total fights. With 15 classes in total, the ideal presence rate will be 6%, right? Which I think one out of 15, I think that's like around there, like 5%, 6%. That makes sense, right? They kind of want, which I don't know. I have so they want the usage for all the classes to be equal across the board, which I think is a mute goal to chase after, because yeah, numbers, it makes sense, right? You split everything equally, you get to 6.6%, but there's a lot of factors that don't get taken into account, and that is why people gravitate towards some classes more than others, right? And we'll touch upon that once we get to the ranking for the classes. However, we should keep in mind that many factors influence choice of the class. Okay, they talk about it here, such as its complexity, range of activities, or simply its appearance. And I think this is the big factor here too. Saditas, I'm looking at you. Nobody wants to play an ugly, hairy jungle man. sorry for the Sadita players out there, but numbers are numbers. Reaching this perfect balance is probably impossible. Yeah. A class with lower presence really doesn't mean that the class is weaker than the others. Yeah, so this is sticking with that 6% there. Different to, okay. Curse, okay, so this is like the big table and that most people will probably pay attention to is the class presence, and it's ordered by the Craw being number 1 at 12%, all the way down to the Sedita at 1.2% for overall presence. I think this is the more important thing to look at here. PVM presence, obviously it's going to be high, followed by the Yop and the Pandawa. Session presence, this doesn't make any sense. I think if they would have just stuck to overall presence and PVM, and maybe, honestly, I would have omitted 3v3 here. I did get a chance to kind of scrub through this earlier. I did this was posted yesterday. I did take a day to like scrub through it, analyze it, kind of digest it for a day. I did check out the French forums, and I mean, obviously 3v3 just across all international player bases, it's pretty much dead, right? So that was the sentiment. Some people were posting how 3v3 is kind of dead and there's no point to it. On the French side of things, right? Obviously, I come from the English side of things, grind and pound servers. So I don't really have too much visibility on the state of the player base over there, but I think VV1 it's takes more precedence over 3v3. But let's talk about this for a little bit. Obviously, Cross. Everybody loves the Craw, whether they just love playing the Ranger class, the Archer. A lot of people seem to gravitate towards that archetype. It looks cool too. It's a cool class, right? Just right off the gate, just the idea of a Ranger class is kind of cool. You play at a distance, you keep away, right? You can hit them, but they can't hit you. I think this Craw makes sense here. I definitely lines up with my perception of how people feel about the Craw. And of course, not just followed by the Yop at 11%. Yop obviously is like the poster child of the game. It's a knight class. It's kind of like a default class. It's kind of like the iconic class when it comes to MMO. It's the knight, right? The guy with the sword. Obviously, a lot of people like that. Talk about the panda. I'm a little surprised about this. I don't know if this is due to the popularity of the Kung Fu Panda movies and just like the Kung Fu Panda movies putting like the Panda Warrior, to the mainstream, making it like this cool thing, this cool character. I think part of it too is Pandawa has always been like a staple on people's teams. Of course, you're gonna have it, right? If you even back in the day, and even back in the day, but even most teams compositions, meta teams, high end teams, are gonna have a panda, right? So I think this is where the bulk of the presence comes from, is its utility. It's a good class, right? You're like committed into the game, you know your way around the game, stuff like that. It just Pandawa makes things so much easy when it comes to like end game stuff. So it makes sense to be here. Top three, for sure. Followed by Saram, obviously the thief kind of ninja class. Sounds pretty cool. People love it. Skeleton Man looks cool. It's got the sexy lady as a female character. People love playing their waifus, right? Makes sense for it. Feka, and I'm not gonna go through all of these, but Feka, I'm surprised to see Feka because visually Feka is not very enticing. It's not very. It's just a regular kid. There's like he doesn't look special or anything like that. I don't know. Like people, I guess people like Feka outside of like the gameplay stuff, right? Right. Maybe it is like the panda thing, right? Where Feka, it's more of a utility class where like if you want to do sort of things, if you want to have an easy time doing, end game stuff, maybe the Feka is there. And then lastly, obviously, the Annie, the healer. If you're running a team, of course, you're going to have a healer. And who's the best? Who do you think of when you think of healing? The Annie, right? The white mage of the game. And then at the bottom, of course, you got Sedita. I think this is just due to the fact that what I said earlier, it's just ugly jungle man. All right. The girl Sedita, obviously, very appealing. But I guess people just don't find playing with like plants and dolls that enticing enough. Seller, they're little kids. They don't look very intimidating. They're really cool characters. Like contextually, they're time wizards, right? They go through time, they teleport. Super cool. Rogue, is a bandit. The idea of a bandit is cool, right? But it's kind of like Saram is kind of a better bandit than a rogue, right? So between the two, like if you're a person who gravitates towards that kind of archetype, that kind of like what's that word? Dark anti-hero archetype, ninja or bandit, you're gonna go with ninja assassin, right? Osamodas, I'm a little surprised about Osamodas because Osamodas always been like a fan favorite, so I'm surprised to see this super low. Obviously, if you're a furry, you're gonna play Echo Flip. Masquerader, if you like circus people, I guess. Foggernaut, kind of in between there. I'm surprised to see it that high, honestly. Shout out to Asteria. And of course, Old Man. But yeah, this is how it breaks down. And I'm talking about impressions at the beginning of the game, right? Because I do get the feeling and the impression that people don't switch classes mid their adventure in Dofus, right? I might be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do feel whatever class you start off, people tend to stick with it, right? Because it's not Dofus. It's not a game where you could just change the class willy nilly, right? It's not a hero shooter where like, oh, this round I'm gonna play as a tank, but next round I'm gonna play as a healer or whatever. You can't just switch classes on the fly, right? So there is a bit of commitment, especially when you start investing in gear, in time, to sticking with the class. Um, We'll go ahead and read this little summary here. It's important to note that process that is too high to low is not a problem itself, but it could indicate that changes from one update to another need monitoring, and it could serve as starting points to identify deeper problems, especially with classes that show big differences between game modes. Uh, okay, so let's look at Craw, for example. Obviously, Craw has a very high presence in PVM and has a high presence in PvP. It makes sense, right? Obviously, not everybody who plays PVM is going to play PvP. So across the board, that makes sense. All right, let's look at, and it's probably high because the farming aspect of it too. There's a lot of reasons. A Yop. For the most part, everything makes sense here. There's nothing weird or nothing like out of like left field. Here, let's take RAM for example. 10% PVM, very high. Obviously, when people ask which is the best solo class, Saram, right? In session, too high. Invisibility is broken. Number 2 OP. Sorry. And then too high. Yeah, invisibility is just driving this class. Let's look at, you know what? Let's look at Foggernaut. PVM low. This doesn't make, see, like, this is kind of weird, which is kind of why I'm not taking Obsession Island into account, because it says PVM is low, but its presence is high in the session. But Obsession Island is PVM, right? Oh wait, I'm looking at the wrong one. PVM low. Oh, this is just about, okay. Okay. As mentioned previously, you need to keep in mind that many factors unrelated to balancing can affect choices of class when that really affects the distribution. Okay, I'm glad they do acknowledge this, because I think this is 100% true. Due to the part is you can't just switch classes like it takes money. It takes, I think it's like 20-30 bucks every time you want to switch. Even though this first habit doesn't provide many answers on its own, it's very useful for interpreting the following figures, which are examined as part of balancing win rates, spell uses, as you know, understand, smaller, okay. In general, the least played classes are used by specialized players who have mastered these classes and know how to get the best out of them. On the other hand, most played classes are a mix of experienced players and beginners, which often has a noticeable impact on win rate. A highly played class will often produce data that is less indicative of the class maximum potential, because it will be dragged down by the results of less experienced players. And here we have win rates. Let's see. Session rank 3v3. Obviously, the OSA here, number 1. Coliseum 1v1 rank and Coliseum win rate. It's not the same thing. This was a little weird. Second tablet shows us more detail about the strength and weakness of the classes in terms of content type, PVM, PvP, PVM, and how it's played, solo or as a team. The Rogue class, for example, has a low win rate for its session and 3v3, but good for 1v1. We can deduce from this that the class's weakness is what it offers for routine gameplay. This is therefore an avenue to explore for more in-depth analysis subsequently. It's worth noting that our criteria for PvP were much broader for our very first balancing updates, and win rate between 40 and 60% was considered very satisfactory, but thanks to the overall improvement of balancing on class performances, we now have a stricter criteria and higher expectations, which has taken certain classes out of range of the results. Okay, now give me 1 second, folks. Drink some water. All right. Okay, so they're using a session island as a way to rank PVM. No, not really. Because here this Adidas number 1. I don't know, maybe the Frenchies got some secret Adidas tech. Followed by Settler, number 2. All right, but obviously Osa, where's number 2 here? Sacrier will be 1, number 3. Masquerader. Makes sense. Mr. Shields over here. Who's number 15? The Yop. 14, the Craw. You know, it's interesting how it's kind of flipped, where the Craw and the Yop were number 2 on our overall presence, but they're the bottom 2 when it comes to 1v1 PvP. So does that mean, and again, this is just me spitballing, that people who are more focused on PvP do gravitate to certain classes because of that? Was number 2 Sacrier? No, not really. Because if that were true, then we would see more. I mean, House of Modus is down here, which is kind of a little surprising. Ceram number 7. I don't know. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Okay, so let's take Ceram for example. Ceram is he's kind of like in the middle. Number 7. Even though he is very high, Ceram's got very high presence in 1v1 PvP. They're not winning a whole lot. They're winning more or less half. I don't know. No, we'll keep going. Class changes. So here they go through like each class pretty much. And okay, so we'll go through the Craw as an example here. We can now look at each class in more detail and show you again why certain changes were made, as well as the impact these changes have actually had on figures. Changes to the Craw class. The Craw class was modified to, so this was what they were aiming for, limit the dominance of explosive arrow and the fire path overall. Make Barricade Arrow more versatile and less demanding in terms of equipment with removal of MP reduction. Encourage players to use a greater variety of air spells and increase overall usage of the path in PVM. After the updates clear the first two goals were achieved. Although the results are less pronounced and less satisfactory, we can still see a reduced disparity between the air path and other paths. So obviously after the changes, the usage of explosive arrow went down in both PVM and PvP. Barricade arrow went up. And the poison arrow, very little impact. And the retreat arrow, more or less, stayed distant. Had some fluctuation between the two formats. As for the changes to win rate, we can see that the crowd class win rate has increased in all areas, but is still unsatisfactory in 3v3. Okay, so does that mean that yeah, this is a little there's a lot to like think about here. Finally, here's a look at the class of spells and elemental path usage. The most and least used spells don't include utilities. Okay, so obviously PVM, Fire, Session Island, Earth, Coliseum, Air. Okay. 1v1 Earth. A few observations. Despite the changes made, the air path is still much less used in PVM, mainly because Poison Arrow is not appealing enough. The Fire path is not as popular in PvP, in part because it's based on several area of effects spells, which are harder to use in these game modes because there are fewer players and the players don't tend to stay close to each other. The Craw class still lacks tools for playing effectively in group PvP, which could be because of a lack of spells that have an overall impact or a lack of specialization in certain roles other than area of effect damage, debuffs of allies. This is a little confusing. This is definitely a little bit confusing because it's like because if I'm a craw, right? Like I'm not unless I'm wrong on this, do people switch their gear based on what they're doing? Obviously, I like the very top of like the hardcore people probably, but I do think most people just have like one set and one build and that's it, right? So it's not like you're, when you're out hunting monsters of fire, but when it's time for end session island, you go earth. But it's like, oh, I feel like doing some 3v3 and let me go switch to air, right? Because again, like the equipment is the kind of like the gate you're going to be hitting to make these changes to yeah, I don't know. Let's look at another one. Let's look at a class I'm more familiar with. Saram. The Saram class was modified to make the Earth path more appealing. I did go full Earth, so it worked. I changed the way the air path works with invisibility to make the classes less frustrating to face. Okay. Changes in spell positions and the rank more spell use. Obviously, earth spells went up. Lethal trap went up. So just poison went down. Poison trap went down. Toxins, no change here, but went up in PvP. Despite the modifications, the Storm class is still struggling to play a role in team-based PvP, since the all-powerful invisibility forces us to decrease the strength of the other surround spells. The class is not a popular choice as an ally. However, the improvement in 1v1 and Ascension Island is very satisfactory, even though the 1v1 win rate is slightly higher than our respective values. PVM is good. Okay. Ascension Island low. Coliseum too low, too low. Here's a look at the class spells and elemental path usage. The most used spells. Okay. Most used path, air. I don't know, man. It doesn't make sense. Conspiracy is actually okay. Okay, yeah. So pretty much they break down for all 15 classes. They do this. So if you're interested in a specific class, go ahead and look at it. Conclusion from this overview. As you can see, even though we can gradually tighten our criteria, as we've already mentioned, there's still a long way to go to reach a satisfactory balance for you and us. Our priority is still to ensure we are heading in the right direction, even if that takes time. Fortunately, it's sometimes hard to gauge the impact of modifications accurately, and we are never immune to making errors of judgment. This was the case for the Masquerader class in the latest update, where the results were far away from our expectations. Please accept our apologies for that. Your suggestions. It's often tricky to provide answers to your suggestions, especially outside of beta phases, because they are usually only studied in depth when preparing balancing updates. The answer resides in whether or not the suggestions are implemented. When reading your comments, the first thing we try to do is understand the problem at the root of the report or suggestion. Suggestions are often aimed at the symptoms of a problem rather than the root cause, and it's more important to understand the origin of the problem or need rather than modify spells that are merely a result of a larger problem. An excellent example of this is the Pendulum spell, which is extremely powerful and can't be made stronger without creating a monster. However, we can adjust the spell by getting it to interact better with other spells, and that could be seen clearly in this update. The second thing we try to do is make a distinction between your impressions of what the data actually shows. Although both are important, it's essential to be aware of the difference to prevent hasty decisions being made. While the main goal is to have a numerical balance between the classes, your impressions, which stems from your enjoyment of the game, are still okay. You know what? I'm glad they said this, because I do feel there is a disconnect when, not just like when it comes to balancing, but just an overall disconnect with the game when with the developers, the design, and the players. Because at the end of the day, you could do all the balancing. You can look at all the numbers, you can tweak all the numbers. If it doesn't feel good, it's wrong. I'll say that again. If it doesn't feel good, if it's not fun, it is wrong. I see that they know this, but do they understand that concept? Because I think this principle right here, if it's not fun, it's wrong, is what has kept Dofus in the little bubble it's been for 20 years, 10 years, what have you, right? It never got out of its little comfortable bubble. I would love to see it break. Honestly, yeah, this is neat. This is cool and everything. Um, I would love to see something like this when it comes to branding, marketing, and advertisement of the game, and seeing if they understand the faults and the fail points the game has when it comes to the outreach of the game to appealing to more people, right? Not necessarily, the game doesn't have to be at a point where, it's a mass market appeal game, right? But I think this is the reason, and this is the reason why I started going into more like critical, talking about the game more critically when it comes to Dofus and its failure to expand into the Western market, into the English player base. Um, and this is why you see, honestly, at the end of the day, this is why some classes get played more than others, right? I think, if you have a class at the bottom, where are you? Not the win race, right? What are these classes doing that these classes are not, right? And that is kind of like the overall question the design team should be asking. Like, how can we make this Adida more cool? How can we make the Rogue more cool? Yeah, we all know the Rogue. Its output damage is crazy. It could one shot anything in the game, right? That's the whole gimmick. That's the payoff. On paper, the numbers. This is the most powerful class, right? The Rogue. The Rogue has a potential for like insane amounts of damage output, right? Like literally, it could one shot anything in the game. But something about it is not cool, right? Whether it's like just the way it plays, the way it looks, the way it kind of feels, right? Because this is a payoff kind of class where you just kind of not doing anything, much of anything, right? Because your bombs you're gonna have that big explosive, no pun intended, turn, right? It might feel a little boring to play the rogue. That's why people don't play it, right? Um, so a lot of this stuff and balancing, which I hope they take more into account. Where's my little? Did I lose my spot? I think I did. It was here somewhere. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with feeling, right? Feeling, and this is not. This is more of an art than a science, right? This is more about emotion than numbers. This is why when people play Dofus, they quit. They don't stick with the game, right? We saw this with Epsilon. This is why Epsilon failed, right? Because it didn't feel fun. It was not fun. Now that you have the background to better understand our responses, and after bombarding you with all this data, we can provide answers for the most common and relevant questions. As we didn't receive suggestions and relevant suggestions for our classes, don't be surprised if you can't. Okay. Yeah, I think just kind of driving that topic home, like, instead of like trying to convince people to like play least played classes, use least played elemental builds. The question should be like, how come these aren't fun, right? How come the fire build is more fun? Why is the fire build more fun, right? The fire crop more fun than the agility one? And that is not a numbers answer. That is the feelings. That's the art, right? That's the art and game design there. Suggestions for the Osamoda class. The option for an Osamoda to apply feline movement or face boo on itself. Okay, this modification is worth considering, but could make the Osamoda's class more powerful in PvP. See, and this is how they start kind of like pigeonholing themselves, right? PvP, which is not desirable. We would need time to test. And the thing is too, right? I know a lot of people have brought this up, like there needs to be a separation of PvP and PvM. All right, like you guys, the thing is like, I'm down here somewhere. And I think they know this too, where like you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? You can't balance both formats at the same time in one go. You just can't. They're two different environments, right? In PvM, you're expected to take down creatures. You're expected to hold your own with monsters that you'd have 14,000 HP in a team, and you're getting hit like crazy and stuff like that. But PvM, PvP, you're expected to go against another character. You just can't do it. And obviously the solution would be to just split it, right? The explosive arrow has different attributes in PvM than it is in PvP. But they've been trying to do this for 20 years, guys, and it's not working out. It's not working out. 20 years, and you're still going at it. You're still going at it, and the thing is, like, they're never gonna reach a middle ground where it's perfectly balanced on both fronts. And again, why are people suggesting this? Why are people suggesting that the OSA can apply feline movement and fangs and boomings on itself? Because that would be fun, right? That sounds freaking awesome. Suggestions for the Untertuck class. Add a cooldown period for pull-out spells or place the gravity state on the next turn. Okay, Cellar. Okay, I know Cellar's a big... Okay, let's go with Craw. Redesign Last Bastion spell to improve its playability without simply increasing damage. The spell grants 2 AP when first used, reduce its cooldown period. And this will create a more dynamic strategy gameplay by freeing the Craw. Class more options without ruining the balance of the game. This suggests the spell to us. The spell has actually already had most of its penalties removed, even though it's very strong. Okay. Okay, so this is another little tidbit here that's kind of important. I'll probably read this here. This is so much. What's our time looking like? 43 minutes. This section doesn't really contain suggestions, but complaints or recurring issues that certain players are encouraging. The classes have lost their identity in Row. They can do everything and are too far from the base classes. Yeah, give me 1 second, folks. All right, so I'm drinking some water here. There are 3 points here for us to comment on. The identity of the classes in the rows came with version 2.0 of Dofus. Before that version, you could only imagine the roles for the various classes via a certain little narrative description on the character creation page. in what is now a retro version of Dofus. So the classes never had a strict or established roles and identities at the time. At this time, the classes can do everything. This perspective is not really correct. The classes have several official roles indicated on the class selection screen, which can result in different ways of playing them. A support role can be played via allies, healing, and even shields. It's important to separate an effect or mechanic from a role. Currently, no class can do everything, but it's true and intentional that classes are no longer restricted to a single type of action. The appeal of the game, like ours, comes from the different ways it can be played. And restricting each class to a single type of action would take the fun out of the game. To draw a rough parallel, you can take part to draw a rough parallel, you can take part in any activity in real life. You'll be better in some than in others, but nothing stops you from trying them all. Dofus Touch is even more restrictive because you can only have a certain number of spells available. The ability to play multiple roles and to perform a wider variety of actions is even more important on mobile devices where gaming sessions are more often played solo. Did I tell you guys this? Didn't? Ain't your boy good? Ain't your boy good? I've been talking about this for like 2 years. More than that. Yeah, and then I'll reiterate here in a little bit. Dofus Touch is a game where people want to play. They want to play as a single player, but with social features, right? And yeah, people play the game by itself. They're not people. How do I say this? The team part of the game is something people don't really seek, right? It's like the vast majority, there's a small portion of people who's like, oh, this is a teammate. Oh, I can't wait to play with other people. No, most people are like, I don't want to play with anybody. I just kind of want to do my thing. I don't want to be waiting around. I'm just kind of do my thing and chat and maybe hang out for a little bit, and that's it, right? So a lot of classes have become self-sufficient as a result. And it makes sense, right? That's just how people play the game. That's how the game has, the game has to adapt to the way people engage with it. Even though none of the classes should excel in every aspect, it's so important that each of them can be somewhat self-sufficient. There we go. To the user that can play have fun in every session, right? It is more fun. Again, fun. Fun is the big word here, right? Games are fun. I hate to break it to y'all, meta players, but people play games to have fun. For the most part, right? That's the whole purpose of a video game. Entertainment. Games are entertainment. If it's not fun, what was the thing I was saying? Shoot, I forgot. If it's not fun, something's wrong. It kind of rhymes a little bit, maybe. I don't know. If it's not fun, something's wrong, right? The truth of the matter is, it is more fun to play alone than with others. Yes, Dofus Touch is a team-based tactical MMO where you're supposed to work with other people together to collaboration. On paper, sure. But what is the actual, like the emotional part of it? Playing with other people sucks, right? More so than playing solo. So sufficient. Finally, regarding the too far from the base of classes point, yes, it's true. And it's a good thing. We are continuing to balance the game, and it's getting better because it's gradually being freed from the shackles of nostalgia. But this is an issue with. Okay, so part of it, kudos to the team, right? Because I do think the more versatile the classes become, the better it is. I, for one, have experienced this, right? I've been playing this game for what, 5, 6, 7 years? When my stupid Inu couldn't push anything. All he had to do was to rely on release. And it was really like RNG when it came to like having the. It was a liability having an Eno on my team when trying to do something like climb, because he couldn't push anything and he couldn't when it was his turn. If release was on a cooldown, which even at level 6, you can only use it like every other turn. My Eno was essentially dead because he couldn't move out of the glyph, right? Same thing with my friend. She played a seller. She was a liability when it came to moving things around. Again, she would get killed. Like, it would suck. But yes, I do agree. The more versatile, right? The more tools they have, the better for everybody, right? We're not stuck in the days where like the only healer is the Annie, right? Just because the Annie is the healer of the game, story wise, and like that's the whole purpose of the Annie. The only Annie is only good for healing, and that's it. If you right. No, they when they revamped the Annie, they did a fantastic job in kind of re-envisioning. Okay, what the Annie is not just a healer, right? The Annie is uh, a word mage, really, right? So let's have it cast spells, more offensive, defensively, support. They really broke the mold when it comes to Annie, and I think the Annie is one of like the best design classes they have here, because like the Annie's still an Annie, but it's not just healing anymore. It's like still doing any things, right? Being a vampire sounds very Annie, right? Doing poison with the flasks and their concoctions and stuff like that's very Annie, right? But the Annie's still healing too. If you want, it's still there, right? So big props to them for breaking that mode. But also, this whole nostalgic thing is their fault, because of their game, they don't grow their player base. I would say a large portion of the player base are people who have been playing the game for ages, right? And this is their fault because the game fails to attract new players, new people who are not bound to nostalgia, right? Classes are improved and will continue to improve. Um, but yeah, I do wish they would improve the onboarding, the experience for people and new players. Um, and this is why it was a little bit harsh when I made the Epsilon video, and that's why I said like Dofus Touch is it's not a good game in general, right? Because for the most part, Dofus is not fun, right? If you try to pitch Dofus, yeah, you're gonna tell people like the good parts, right? Yeah, it's a tactical MMO. It's got 15 classes. You do this turn-based combat. You're not gonna tell them you're gonna be grinding hours upon hours and hours trying to get gear, level up, your professions. You gotta make commas. You're gonna ask for help. Nobody's gonna help you. You want to play by yourself, but you need a team, right? They're not gonna tell you like overall. And this is just not me, my opinion, right? I think what Epsilon showed us is, for the most part, people don't like Dofus. That's why Epsilon collapsed, right? Because even when people tried it, they were like, I don't want to play this game. That's literally what happened, right? The market rejected Dofus. Dofus Touch. That's literally what happened. Why? Because it's a bad game. Truth be told, it is a bad game. Yeah, that obviously that doesn't stop me from enjoying it, right? Having fun with it when I can. But for the most part, Dofus is a bad game. Dofus is not a fun game for a lot of people. And that's why it fails to attract people. And that's why the only player base it has heavy ties to nostalgia. And I think this is part why the team has kind of shackled themselves too, because I know they want to kind of broaden the scope. They want to break the mode of what Dofus is. But let's look at let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture, guys. It's been 10 years, and the game kind of more or less is the same thing, right? The game has hardly evolved. You're still doing the same things you were doing in 2016, right? Because you're trying to appease the nostalgia crowd, because that is your main audience, because that's the only thing they have, right? They don't have fresh blood. They don't have new players. They don't have young players coming in. Because when those players come in, Dofus is not a fun enough game to stick with. But that's just my 2 cents, folks. Let's keep going. Push damage. Block spider Dofus. Well, not as much use as you think. Okay. PvP based on perceptors. Okay, I'm sure PvP purple. Okay, our current target class is for 1.70. As explained at the beginning of the block. Come on now, it's only been 40 minutes. It's been 56 minutes. We'll be focusing on a limited number of classes for modifications going forward. Okay, first we'll mention the classes. The Yop. Let's start with the Yop because of all 3 classes to choose for the update, this one is unavoidable. We want to review different spells such as Brockle and the least played elemental spells mentioned in the previous sections. It's also essential for us to focus on the first few levels of the class. And the thing is, it always comes here, right? And this is why I keep pushing that, because a lot of commitment, a lot of decisions are made when the person starts the game, right? The first impression makes or breaks this game, like literally, right? I do feel like once you're locked into a class, like you're there, right? Just because this is a type of game where you can't just switch classes, like really, like you can't just character swap, right? So a lot of this has to happen, like literally within like the first hour or 2 of the game. And don't get me started on Alberta, that whole area, the whole introduction area, just sucks, right? And I've made videos about this too. Everything stems from those first couple of hours, right? Those couple of hours have to be, Dofus has to be at its peak at those at first 2 hours, has to be at its peak. It has to freaking convince people, yo, this game is badass, this game is fun, it's gonna be worth it. It needs to make, I don't know, man. Because of the success rate of, oh, they even talk about, okay, you know what? I know we're now, just buckle in, guys. Just buckle in. It's also essential for us to focus on the first few levels of the class because the success rate of the Belladonna dungeon has dropped too much for our liking. As the Yacht class is in the introduction to the game for many players, it's crucial that the first few hours of experiencing the office tests are enjoyable. Guys, is Challenger on the nose or what? I've been talking about this for years now. I've literally... We won't backtrack on adding spells with a modifier range to the class because we want to preserve with that idea, but we'll think about increasing the base range of some of these spells to slightly reduce the impact of this character. See, and I want you guys to get a picture, get a perspective where people don't even make it past the Belladonna dungeon, right? Let alone get to level 200, let alone get endgame gear, let alone care about any of this stuff. I want that to sink in, right? Most people don't care about this stuff. At the end of the game, is the game fun or not? That's all that matters. The emotional part is all that matters at the end of the game. Yes, the data, the numbers, it is a component, but the make or break it is the emotional part. Did I have fun with this game? Is this game worth my time? Okay, people are not worried about, oh, the spell has modifiable range. Oh, the spell does 14 to 16 damage. Nobody cares. Let's see, let's keep going here. The up class, one of the few classes, no concessions, equipment needed against secondary range, which meant it could be. You know why the Yop was cool? I never played the Yop, right? I've never been a Yop person. But you know what made the Yop so popular, so awesome? Seeing that big number. Ever since they changed Wrath, it all went downhill. I agree with you guys, right? Bring back Wrath. Right? And that was the emotional part, right? You would get a big hit of dopamine when you would see like, oh shoot, big number, right? And I think Dofus needs more of those moments where it's like, yo, this cool thing happened, right? Seller and Neripsis modifications, the Seller and Neripsis classes are concerned because of the results for PvP. Both, I don't know why they keep talking about 3v3 and 1v1 to improve the situation. We first wanted to propose modifications that reduce their class's ability to heal and self-heal. For the Seller class, the idea would be to perform several tests. If we can, better integrate the air path into the telegraph mechanics, potentially by adding a few spells. Okay, to Pro Shake. Echo Flip. Okay, Survey. Conclusion. Okay. Of course, going to read the comments. A few comments here. There's way more on the front side. We might check that out here. Save the pitch like this for the devs, teams, or investors. This is not a user-friendly article. While interesting to some, we appreciate this transparency. That's simply going over most people. Yeah, this is why I'm making the video. For the most part, it's just a bunch of fluff talk. It's just a bunch of like game design talk, pretty much. Data and analyzing, which as a player, it doesn't really do anything for you. Goofy Curry. I disagree. And they are being as open as they can because people always find something to complain about. Yeah, and that's the thing too, right? Like this video probably won't get a whole lot of views due to the topic, due to the length. Most of the videos where I talk more like critically and more analytically, more deep dive into like, why isn't Dofus Touch popular with the English market base? Oh, because right, most of the videos don't do too well, but I do them because I do find them interesting, and it is interesting, right? But if you're a regular player, and there's nothing here that you should be worrying about or anything like that. Yeah, I'm with Goofy. Oh, Mr. Desire, shout out to Asteria. I'm with Goofy on this. Maybe add a summary. Yeah, because even this video is long too. I really appreciate the information. It says, I'm the Resident Fogger simp. I wonder what the stats are for Foggers doing dual elemental builds, and the notes here only suggest mono builds. Specifically in relation to the fire path, it's hard to use that one mono because Pilfer is diagonal only and the other two, okay. But the late game, there's a lot of sets, okay. Yeah, I think I see what Mr. Desire is talking about. I think that would be kind of hard to track, right? Because these spells themselves are a mono, right? So when you use a spell, it ticks up for that element. right? With the numbers aren't going to show like, oh, you're using a water spell and a fire spell. Oh, we're going to put 1 point into a hybrid build over here, right? Um, I think this is kind of evident more. Uh, Actually, you know what? Let's go up to the foggers here. Yup. Now, Saram. And he rips. Yeah, I think it's least use path fire. Because I know Asteria is a water fire, I think. I know the Fogger not. It's a class where you really have to like mix and match like the different spells. Nonetheless, you know what? It would be interesting to see that statistic. I don't know if they have that. The supreme perspective is one of the high resistance people use. Okay. Yeah, I can't really comment too much on it. I'm not a Fogger person. Sorry. That's a wall of text. If I've ever seen one, the forum definitely needs a spoiler in your menus. This is not a human readable format. And I'm a guy who enjoys reading this kind of stuff. After reading, first thing that comes to mind is, are you taking into account? And if yes, how? Facts, i.e. Sailor performs in PvP where 10% of players is good, plays a lot, and the rest suck and Sailor hard, or PvM encounters where the class is neither godlike or almost useless. Nautilus dungeon. Also, which with such declining player numbers, I'm not completely ignoring data from 159 the first playthrough. So wise choice. I personally have multiple level 200s, but I'm pretty sure mid-game player retention is pretty bad. And good luck trying to enjoy PvP against max alts per souls. Player retention is bad all around, really. I think player retention is somewhat there at level 200 because by that time the people who are committed, even though, it's not out of the norm to see people just quit the game, right? Even when they have end gear, level 200 gear. So yeah, that is it, folks. You know what? This video is long already, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna go to the French side. Give me 1 second. All right, and then to kind of finish it off, we are gonna read the French. Look at how much more engagement the French side of things have, because really, at the end of the day, this is kind of like the main community they are trying to cater. Unfortunately, that's just the way things it is. We just gotta get through these kind of quickly here. Captain Fortune, I don't know where you saw the cross win rate was satisfactory in what we want, or that its presence is strong PVM at level 200, but we certainly must not be playing the same game. You only have to look at the Coliseum rating to realize the state of the class in 1v1. You reduce the resistance, you increase the damage of all classes, and you put a majority of melee classes in 1v1. Mid-distance cards being considered mainly away, since today all classes in the game can cross the map in one turn. And still no balancing plan for this class. Every time it's the same class that are reworked, we're fed up. Okay? Ben Berserker, I understand that you want to base your adjustments and uses on performance data, but I think it's important not to rely solely on statistics to decide on nerfs or buffs. Analyzing only spells and class usage rates to draw conclusions can sometimes lead to decisions connected from how the players feel. Yo, shout out to Ben Berserker. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Disconnected on how the players feel, right? And this is a disconnect the players feel with the game in general. especially in PVM. Each class has a strong identity, and that's precisely what makes the game so rich. However, today we have the feeling that certain identities are being diluted in the name of overall balance. As such, I would like to advocate for the return of the Earth Yup as an iconic damage. This guy read my mind. Or did I read his? Damage machine, it has lost its impact, and that's a shame for a class that was supposed to represent brute force par excellence. Why not give it back to power? Why not give back its power in PVM, even that means compensating for more pronounced weakness elsewhere? Okay, Captain Fortune again. Berserker, I totally agree with you. Today classes are becoming bland, more and more alike. Before a class could heal or burst shields or summon or boost or have a lot of mobility, today everyone does everything. Or almost, and some classes are lagging behind and are not allowed to have, not making them immediately uncompetitive. Before the game was perhaps not more balanced, but at least it was not this frustration that 1v1 fight. Okay. Before, the game was perhaps not more balanced, but at least there was not this frustration that 1v1 fights ended in 3 turns and that it was about who will hit the hardest on the opponent. Before, there was a strategy diversity. I disagree. I think all in all, Dofus, in terms of like, at the end of the day, Dofus revolves around damage, right? Whoever deals the most damage wins, right? Whoever brings the HP to 0 loses, right? That's pretty much the battle system in a nutshell, right? That's the only win condition the game has, right? This is not like there's no other win conditions other than damage and HP, right? Those are the 2 factors dealing with. It's always been like that. So this whole strategy thing, it's not a. It's never been that complex, really. Especially when it comes to PvP. PvP, it's always been people just whacking each other. And guess what? There's nothing wrong with that. People actually like that. That's why 1v1 is fun. People like that. People just like hitting each other. Yes, I know, guys. Dofus, it's this intricate team strategy game. People don't care. People don't play it that way. Right? This is why 3v3 died. Is dead. This is why Nkama is molding and acclimating classes so people could play solo. So they could be more efficient just whacking things, right? How is it today that Ecoflit hits more than a Yop, and yet I hate Yops? How is it that sellers can hit or heal more than Interruptus? How is it that Sakir? But I think this is part of like the nostalgia thing that we're addressing too, right? Why not, right? Why shouldn't an Ecoflip hit harder than a Yop? Why shouldn't the seller heal more than an Eripsa? I don't know. But I mean, that is part of like progressing the game, right? And this is why, Delphis Retro exists. Where the game is kind of stuck in time. Where, all this stuff is still happening there. Panda So. Hi, sorry to the community, the whole analysis. Hi, so sorry. Oh, all right. This guy's coming in with some fire over here. Sorry to tell the community that the whole analysis is wrong because you deliberately made disappear the fact that after the update, the classes that you nerfed were abandoned to the profile of other classes such as the Eka or the Steamer, which were weekly presented on the servers. GG for Panda Nerf. Next time to lead it simpler. P.S. The guy who thinks to find availability. The guy who thinks this is auto translated, guys. So to find a viability in this way was word noob is really weak. In the Air Panda lane. Okay. Pan Berserker coming in again. Regarding the survey, I haven't looked at the survey, so potato. In fact, simply instead of nerfing, put all the classes back to the same level they were before the update. You'll see that everything will be back. See, and this is again, this is their fault too, because this is their audience, right? This whole nostalgia, don't change anything, people. I mean, this is their core audience, right? And this is the people who they are catering to at the end of the day. So, as Ankama, do you listen to this, or do you do your best to kind of move away from it as smoothly as you can? I don't know, right? That's something Ankama has to navigate through. But I do feel like a big portion of the hardcore gamer community, the player base of the game, is probably in line with Potato and like with Panasusu, right? We're like, don't change anything, leave it as it is, everything's good, right? You exclude analysis on the 4v4, but the game mode spotted in Dove is omnipresent. In 4v4, are they talking about perks? Same goes for Perceptor fights. But the thing is, Perceptor fights, I kind of agree with Ankama not to include it because they're more, it's not a format, right? It's just something that happens in the overworld of the game. Yes, it is player versus player, but it's not a, how do I want to say this? It's not subject to the same this is so weird. It's not like the same competitive environment. Because what drives perk attacks, and I think they talked about this here for a little bit too, is because it's so like spontaneous too, right? Because I'm sure there's a meta team, right? I'm sure there's a meta team for the attackers, and the attackers usually have a huge advantage because they are more they're prepared, right? That is the edge they have. They're more calculated. They're set up properly. I'm sure whatever meta team, it's OP, right? And when the defenders come, it's just a bunch of random guys who happen to be there and they got to defend, right? These people probably not ready to fight in a competitive setting, as were like 1v1. Like, yeah, both people have the intent to have a competitive fight, right? They're ready. They're seeking it. So I do agree not to kind of. It'd be interesting to see that data, for sure. But I wouldn't make any major decisions from it. That is my take. If you got a different take, let me know. Also confirm the meta is okay. Yeah, so there is a meta there. The following indicators would be more relevant. The number of class changes potions used after your balance. 4v4, 100 times more combat in 4v4 than 3v3. Hello, has a seller. Okay. Hello, reading. Hello, there is one observation to remember. You're constantly trying to balance classes for PvP. Isn't that a problem? Ben Berserk is in here. Yeah, I agree. They've been doing this for 10 years. Newsflash, it ain't working. It's never worked. It hasn't worked on PC for 20 years. Hasn't worked over here for 10 years. So I totally agree with you. It would be really relevant to separate. Yeah, people have been talking about this for as long as I remember. Lots of things to say, but hey, let's avoid drowning. The stats are cool, but they don't mean much. What level is it? Uh, yeah, I mean, honestly, I would take the stats with a grain of salt here. I mean, they're just raw numbers, right? Make what you will with it. Okay, so then for PP, can really tell. Okay, and when and well, I remember when you said not to balance the game according to 1v1. We we end up with a 3v3 where only two classes are correctly balanced. The level is also capital. Okay, and Google Translate really messed that one up. Another magnificent speech to muddy the waters. Honestly, bravo for this smokescreen performance. They ain't playing around over there. Hey, man, this is juicy reading these comments from the French community. Your statistics are already quite pathetic. Man, this guy sounds like an anime villain. Don't even take into account 4v4 Perceptors, which is nearly the most played mode currently. No, you prefer to rely on 3v3 Coley. This is almost deserted mode that no one did touch. Yeah, so even on the first side, nobody's playing. So sorry guys. It's not me hating on 3v3. Like, it's literally you guys. You guys don't play it. The player base doesn't play it. The player base doesn't care about 3v3. It's not me just hating on 3v3. Okay? It's not, people don't like it. I'm sorry to tell you 3v3 lovers out there. It's not fun. Like I said, it's more fun to deal with the madness as 1v1 than to deal with a boring 3v3. But apparently 4v4 is more fun, right? Actually, that should be a good topic. Why is 4v... That could be a topic for another video, right? Like, what are the reasons why people have find 4v4 more appealing than 3v3, right? Than like a dedicated PvP format where... And I think it goes back to that word, guys. It goes back to that word, fun. I think it's more fun to go around attacking people and taking their stuff and then throwing it in their face than having just a regular 3v3 fight. I think that's what it is. Okay. The pushback meta, none of this according to you. Yet in 4v4, each team has its own designated. Okay. And let's talk about the masterpiece of rebalancing. It was a pillar of PvP. Today's simple punching bag. Okay. When balancing classes, it's essential to remember the obvious. Statistics always tell the whole story. And this is something I've been talking about too. Relying exclusively on usage and victory figures. Let's take a telling. Okay. You know what? This is so long, guys. This is so long. Ugh. I need some water. I'll be right back. All right. How many of you guys are with me right now? It's probably just my buddy Risen. Shout out Risen. When balancing classes, it's essential to remember the obvious. Statistics don't always tell the whole story. Relying exclusively on usage or victory figures to judge the power or relevance of a spell can paradoxically lead to counterproductive decisions. And I 100% agree with Karen. Let's take a telling example, the Fire Feka and the Spell Furnace. Before the overhaul, Furnace represented one of the pillars of the Feka's fire gameplay, efficient, dynamic, with a clear offensive role. After the changes, the Focus Fire Path is now one of the least used. Here, the high usage statistic didn't reveal a balancing problem, but simply the fact that the spell was at the heart of the Fire Path strategy. AKA, it was fun to use. There you go, guys. By nerfing a popular spell without really analyzing its role and consistency in the Fire Path, you kill entire orientation of the class. Wasn't a 70 to 80% activation of the arrival glyph more interesting? What about a transfer to heroism? Pushback. It's time to get to the heart of this subject. Pushback meta. It must be sad, frankly, that your current formula for calculating pushback damage needs to be reviewed. Today, the pushback meta poses real problems. It reduces elemental diversity to effectively counter pushback. You yourself must enter the race for pushback damage to the detriment of fire. Okay, I don't know too much about the pushback stuff, so I probably won't be able to comment on this very well. And make any classic defense almost useless. Full 35% tanks are useless. To date, no limits of paths can compete with this. Okay. Successful balancing cannot be based solely on raw statistics. You have to analyze the context, understanding the logic of a spell, the real impact in combat, and listening to the active PvP community, especially in formats where the meta is taking hold, like in 4v4. For pushback, the real overhaul is necessary. Without this, the meta will remain locked, the elemental paths underexploited, and the general frustration well above the 2,000 damage per turn we take throughout truce. I agree with you, Captain Fortune. Personally, I play Inu and Intertrough, and I find that the water route is no longer balanced compared to the other route. Coin toss at 3 AP should have rocked more than coin toss at 2 AP, but when you add up the damage of 2 coin tosses at 3 AP and 3 coins, okay, Hyperbarian man. This guy hangs out. I recognize this name. I've seen him in the English side. This indicates that the victory figures, figures presented above are mainly based on fights where numerical superiority is to... Oh, he's talking about PvE, yeah, the perk fighting. Just of attackers. The value differs when the two teams are numerically equal. The figure is... Okay. Yeah, I mean, just look how much more engaged community. Oh, they even responded. You know what? We'll read Ravas here, last one, since they responded. Yeah, this just keeps going. Yeah, look how much more active the French side of things are. All right, last video. Just bear with me, folks. Bear with me. A huge thank you for taking the time to give us a little insight into the tools and data that contribute to your balancing decisions. Obviously, it also raises a lot of questions. 1. Do they answer the questions here? They do. Hello, let's take your various questions point by point. Okay. When you talk about feedback tracking reform, is it only for class balancing or for all returns? We are talking here about all feedback, especially during beta phases. The beta of update 1.6a reveals some problems concerning exchanges with players. This is why we made organizational changes on our Discord dedicated to the beta. For example, we also decided to add suggestions to our patch notes during this period to allow you to get answers to the most popular proposals. Okay. Given the undeniable complexity of balancing 15 classes across 200 levels and several game modes, why shoot yourself in the foot by proposing the addition of a new class in the game in the previous priority survey? Whether we offer it or not, options can differ among the team. The addition of a new class remains a subject that comes up fairly regularly in community requests, and it's important to take the measure to an extent of this request, whether the choice is subsequently retained or not. Makes sense. Are there any AI tools for this specific scope? Is this something you plan to invest in? The use of AI is not a method we particularly appreciate, apart from possibly some basic treatment and involving decisions. That makes sense. Yeah. I think, um, like I said before, I think a lot has. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but a lot of it has to do with just good game design, really. Um, a lot of these issues would be solved with good game design. I said it. How do you weigh the impact of equipment in the balancing? The use of equipment and its impact is measured over a different timeline. Yeah, there's a bunch of variables. I have the impression that the most. I'm starting to get ahead of guys. I think I'm going to have to cut this short. I have the impression that the most or least played paths are only a comparison of mono elemental space. Our stereo brought this up too. Let's see what they got to say. The paths represented are indeed often just mono elemental builds because it was simpler for this presentation to stick to, except for the few examples. I think they give an example with the Ceram, where like, even though the fire build is the least played, they know people play it or engage with it when they do like the trap build, which is, it's not as straight edge as calling it like an earth build. It's a fire build. It's a trap build, right? Like where do you slot that into, right? We can discern by elemental classes in the distribution of spells used in combat, with some of the data I presented here, as well as the use of equipment, as you mentioned above. This is a subject that lends itself more to approximation, and yeah, it's hard to keep track of it. It is therefore an additional point of vigilance that we must, yeah. So they could do it, but it's just more. It just muddies the water more. During a combat live, you announced that you had the Ceram's invisibility in your sights. What is it ultimately not one of your priorities? Ceram is still part of our medium-term objectives, but the constraint and technical needs linked to its modification prevents us from prioritizing it over follow-up updates, whose objective is to adjust values, and when the schedule is too tight for some of the teams involved in these modifications, there will be unfortunately be several, invisibility being a very particular and risky operation, in particular because of its potential impact on the AI of monsters. Okay. That is this, folks. Yeah, it's a lot. It's probably one of my longest. 130. I'll stop it there, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Or you guys stuck around this far. It's just interesting, nonetheless. I think it definitely gives a lot of insight with how they approach game design, they approach some of the decisions they make for the game, but also, the game. The game is in the state it is because of this too, right? Um, I know the game designers have a lot on the plate and everything. There's a lot of moving gears. There's a lot of puzzle pieces to this. But I think the ultimate answer and the ultimate question is it fun? Is it fun, right? I mean, seeing from the French community, I mean, it's pretty much in line with what we experience here on the English side of things. And the thing is, it's like not to like beat a dead horse with a stick again, but like game design, good game design is universal, right? It should it should transcend language barriers. A good game is a good game, regardless if it's in French, Italian, Chinese, Korean, Japanese. Japanese is a good example, right? Good game design is good game design, and it all starts with is it fun? Because if it's not fun, it is wrong. And I'll leave it at that, guys. All right, I'm out of here. I'm not gonna see you. Get out of here. Get out of here. Go home. Go home. All right, see you guys.